The autumn wind blew yellow leaves down Main Street as an old blue pickup truck pulled up in front of a small house on Lindale Avenue. Brenda Morgan turned off the engine and froze for a moment, looking at her new home. The house was modest, a two-story 1960s structure with faded blue paint and a small porch, but it was hers. For the first time in many years, she had a place she could call home. 32 years of life had taught Brenda to be cautious about new beginnings. Too many disappointments, too many looks full of misunderstanding or outright hostility. But Norman seemed different. The university town with a population of 125,000 promised the relative anonymity she had so lacked in small towns. Here, among students and teachers, among people accustomed to diversity, she hoped to find peace. As she unloaded her things, Brenda noticed a woman watering flowers in the neighboring yard. Her neighbor was about her age, with chestnut hair pulled back in a casual ponytail and a kind face. Their eyes met, and the woman smiled. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she called out as she approached. "I'm Daphne Melfi. I live in that house with the red door." "Brenda Morgan," she replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Nice to meet you." "Need any help moving? My husband David will be home from work soon. He could help with the heavy stuff." Brenda felt a familiar anxiety. First encounters were always a challenge, but there was no curiosity or judgment in Daphne's voice, only a genuine desire to help. "Thanks, but I'm almost done. I don't have much." Daphne nodded but didn't leave. "Do you work at the university? Most of our neighbors are connected to OU." "No, at the city library. I start tomorrow." "Oh, that's great. I'm there a lot with my students. I teach at Washington Elementary School. Mrs. Johnson, our librarian, is a wonderful woman. She retired. I'm filling in for her." At that moment, a beat-up red pickup truck pulled up to the house. A man in work clothes got out, tall, broad-shouldered, with the tired face of a man who works with his hands. David Melfi looked exactly how Brenda imagined a mechanic from Oklahoma would look. "David, this is our new neighbor, Brenda," Daphne called out. David approached, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze lingered on Brenda a little longer than usual. She could feel him trying to read her, as many people do when they first meet someone, but then he just nodded. "Welcome to Norman. If you need anything, we're close by." "Thanks." Daphne took her husband by the arm. "Brenda works at the library. She's replacing Mrs. Johnson." "Ah." Old Mrs. Johnson finally decided to retire. "My Daphne is always there with her students," David smiled. "I hope you like children." "I love them," Brenda replied sincerely. The next morning, Brenda stood in front of the Norman Central Library, nervously adjusting her blouse. The building was impressive. Red brick, tall windows, classic early 20th century architecture. Inside, it smelled of old paper and furniture polish, a familiar, comforting smell. "You must be Brenda," a voice said behind her. She turned and saw a woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes behind glasses. "I'm Helen Rogers, the assistant director. We're so glad you accepted our offer." The first day was spent getting to know her colleagues and learning the system. The library was larger than Brenda had expected. 3 floors of books, a computer room, a children's section, and even a small art gallery. There were 7 staff members, all of whom welcomed her warmly, although some couldn't hide their curiosity. During her lunch break, Brenda was sitting in a small cafe across the street from the library when she heard a familiar voice. "Brenda, how was your first day?" Daphne was standing next to a table, holding shopping bags. "Better than I expected," Brenda replied. "Sit down if you're not in a hurry." Daphne sat down across from her. "I just finished shopping. David is stuck at the car repair shop today. Some urgent work." They talked about work, the city, and the little things in everyday life. Brenda felt herself gradually relaxing. Daphne was one of those people who was easy to talk to, open, sincere, with no hidden agenda. "You know, I was thinking of inviting you over for dinner this weekend," Daphne said. "Nothing fancy, just a barbecue in the backyard. You can meet a couple of our friends." Brenda hesitated. Group gatherings had always been difficult for her. Too many opportunities for awkward questions, sidelong glances, and unpleasant comments. "I don't want to impose." "Come on! We'd love to have you! David's a great steak cook, and I make the best potato salad in the neighborhood." Daphne laughed. "Say yes. Newcomers need friends." Brenda looked into Daphne's kind eyes and nodded. "Okay, what should I bring?" "Just yourself." That evening, on her way home, Brenda reflected on the day. For the first time in a long time, she felt something like hope. Maybe here in Norman, she really could start over. The next day, a group of first graders arrived at the library on a field trip. Brenda watched Daphne skillfully handle the children, strict but kind, able to interest every child. It was clear that she loved her job. "Children, this is our new librarian, Mrs. Morgan," Daphne introduced her. "She will help you find the most interesting books." The children surrounded Brenda, showering her with questions. She told them about the new arrivals, showed them colorful illustrations, and read excerpts from fairy tales. Time flew by. "You have a talent," Daphne said when the children left. They were immediately drawn to you. Children don't judge. They accept people for who they are. Daphne looked at her intently. Shouldn't adults do that too? They should, but they don't always. That evening, for the first time in a long time, Brenda felt truly at home. She unpacked the last boxes, arranged the books on the shelves, and hung up a few photographs. The house was gradually taking on a personality of its own. On Friday, while getting ready for the barbecue at Melfi's, Brenda stood in front of the mirror for a long time, choosing what to wear. She wanted to look appropriate, but not too formal. She settled on jeans and a light blouse, a simple but elegant outfit. David was a master at grilling. He stood at the barbecue, turning the steaks, and telling a joke to a couple of friends, Mike and Linda Harris. Mike worked as an engineer at the university, and Linda was a nurse at the local hospital. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives. "Brenda, tell us, where are you from?" Linda asked when they sat down at the table. "Tulsa. I worked at a college library." "What made you move here? Family?" Brenda felt a familiar tension. Personal questions were always a minefield. "I wanted to change. Norman seemed like a good place to start over." Daphne sensed her discomfort and changed the subject. The rest of the evening was spent in casual conversation about the town, work, and plans for the fall. As she walked Brenda home, Daphne said, "I hope you enjoyed yourself. Mike and Linda are nice people, but Linda can be a little nosy sometimes." "Everything was wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. We should get together more often. David says he liked you. He's usually cautious with new people." Brenda nodded, but deep down, she felt a slight uneasiness. David had indeed been more friendly to her than men usually are on a first meeting. His glances, his smiles. No, she was just thinking too much. He was married to Daphne. He had no reason to show any special interest in her. As she fell asleep in her new bedroom, Brenda thought about the past week, the job she liked, the neighbors who had accepted her without asking questions, the friends who could become real friends. Maybe this time things would be different. 3 weeks had passed since she moved in, and Brenda was beginning to understand Norman's rhythm. In the morning, she would walk to work on Jenkins Avenue and buy coffee at Mary's coffee shop, where barista Jason already knew her order by heart. She spent her time at the library helping students with their research, organizing book displays, and reading to children on Thursdays. In the evenings, she would walk around the university campus or sit on the porch with a book. Daphne began to visit her regularly after work. They would drink tea in Brenda's kitchen and talk about everything. The books they were reading, Daphne's difficult students, their plans for the weekend. Gradually, their conversations became more personal. "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing touch with David," Daphne confessed one evening, twirling her cup in her hands. "We live like roommates. He comes home from work, eats dinner, watches TV, and goes to bed, and I feel invisible." Brenda nodded gently. "How long have you been together?" 7 years. "We got married right after college. Everything seemed so simple then." Daphne sighed. "We wanted children, you know. We tried for 3 years. Lots of tests, treatment. Nothing worked. After that, something broke between us. I'm so sorry. The doctors say it's me. David never blames me, but I can see how he looks at other people's children, especially when I take my students on field trips." Brenda reached out and touched Daphne's hand. "It's not your fault." "I know. I understand that with my head. But the heart doesn't listen to the mind." That same evening, after Daphne had gone home, Brenda heard loud voices coming from the house next door. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clearly confrontational. Then a door slammed and she saw David get into his pickup truck and drive away. The next morning, Daphne came to work with dark circles under her eyes. "Are you okay?" Brenda asked when Daphne brought another group of children to the library. "Just didn't sleep well," Daphne replied, but her smile was forced. After the children left, Daphne lingered. "We had a fight last night," she said quietly. "Over something stupid. I wanted to go to my sister's for the weekend, and he said he had plans with his friends, like always." "What kind of plans?" "Fishing, or hunting, or just sitting in the garage drinking beer. Anything but spending time with me." Brenda saw the pain in her friend's eyes and didn't know what to say. Other people's family problems always seemed like a minefield to her, especially given her own complicated relationship history. On Friday, David showed up unexpectedly at the library. Brenda was sitting at the reference desk, helping a student find materials for a term paper, when she heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, can you tell me where to find some books on auto mechanics?" She looked up and saw David. He looked awkward standing among the bookshelves in his work clothes. "The technical department is on the second floor," she replied, finishing with the student. "Looking for anything in particular?" "A diesel engine repair manual. We've got a complicated breakdown at the garage." She took him upstairs and helped him find the book he needed. David leafed through it, frowning in concentration. "Thanks. I didn't think the library would have such specialized stuff. We try to meet all the needs of the community." He nodded but didn't leave. Instead, he looked at her intently. "Daphne says you've become good friends. She's a wonderful woman." "Yes, wonderful." There was a strange note in his voice, either sadness or regret. "Too good for someone like me." Brenda didn't know how to respond to such a confession. David seemed to realize his mistake and quickly added, "Anyway, it's good that she has a friend. She needs someone to talk to." "About what?" He shrugged. "Girl stuff. I don't really understand her sometimes." After he left, Brenda thought about the conversation for a long time. There was something about David's words that bothered her. Not the words themselves, but the subtext, the way he looked at her. On Saturday, Daphne invited Brenda to take a walk around the university campus. It was the height of autumn. The trees were ablaze with red and gold, and students were crowding the lawns, getting ready for a football game. "I studied here," Daphne said as they passed the education building. "I dreamed of becoming a teacher since I was a child. David enrolled too, but dropped out after his first year. He said school wasn't for him." "How did you two meet?" "At a party in the dorm. He was working at a local bar delivering drinks for student parties. He was the most handsome guy I had ever seen." Daphne smiled, but there was sadness in her smile. "All the girls were in love with him, but he chose me. I couldn't believe it." They sat down on a bench near the Bizzell Library. Daphne took out a thermos of coffee and offered Brenda some. "What about you? Was there anyone special?" Brenda hesitated. The question inevitably came up in any friendship, but it was always difficult to answer. "I've been in relationships, but nothing serious." "Why? You're a beautiful, intelligent woman. Any man would be lucky." "It's complicated," Brenda interrupted. "Not everyone is ready to accept the peculiarities of my life." Daphne looked at her intently. "Do you want to tell me about it?" Brenda took a deep breath. If their friendship was to become real, Daphne would have to know the truth sooner or later. Better to hear it from her than from town gossip. "I'm a transgender woman, Daphne. I was born in a male body, but I've always known that I'm a woman. I went through transition a few years ago." Daphne was silent for a long minute, processing the information. Brenda tensed, bracing herself for awkwardness, judgment, or worse, the loss of a friendship. "That explains a few things," Daphne finally said. "The way some people look at you. Linda was asking strange questions after the barbecue." "What did she say?" "Nothing specific. Just, how women sometimes sense something's wrong but can't put their finger on it." Brenda nodded. "I understand if this changes our relationship." "It doesn't," Daphne said firmly. You're my friend. That's all that matters." Relief washed over Brenda. "Thank you. But I want to understand. Was it hard?" "Very. My family turned their backs on me. My friends disappeared. It was almost impossible to find a job. That's why I move around so much. I start over where no one knows me. And here? Here, for the first time in a long time, I feel normal. Thanks to people like you." Daphne took her hand. "I'm glad you trusted me." As they were walking home, David's red pickup truck pulled up beside them. He rolled down the window. "Hey ladies, how was your walk?" "Great," Daphne replied, but her voice was cool. "You're back early from fishing." The fish weren't biting. David looked at Brenda. "Want a ride home?" "Thanks, we're walking." "As you wish." He started to drive away, but in the rearview mirror, Brenda caught his gaze lingering on her longer than necessary. On Sunday, Brenda was working in the garden, planting tulip bulbs in front of the house, when she heard the sound of a lawnmower in the neighbor's yard. David was mowing the lawn, glancing in her direction from time to time. Daphne was nowhere to be seen. "Nice day for gardening," he called over the fence. "Yes, I have to get it done before the frost sets in." He turned off the mower and walked over to the fence. "Need some help?" "I'm fine, thanks." Daphne went to her sister's for the day. She said you didn't want to go with her. "I have things to do around the house." David nodded but continued to stand by the fence. "You know, I think you're a little lonely here. New town, new job. I'm used to being alone." "You shouldn't get used to it. Life's too short to spend it alone." There was something in his words that made Brenda look up at him. His gaze was serious, almost intimate. "David, I'm just saying that if you ever need company, I'm always around. Daphne is often late from school or away visiting her sister, and I'm home alone most of the time." Brenda sensed danger in his words. "I think I'd better go inside." "Sure. I didn't mean to bother you." But as she got up and walked toward the house, she felt his eyes on her. At the door, she turned and saw that he was still watching her. That night, lying in bed, Brenda thought about what had happened. David had been flirting with her. There was no doubt about that. But why? Because of his problems with Daphne? Or because he was curious about her uniqueness? Some men were attracted to transgender women precisely because they were transgender. Whatever his motives, it was dangerous. Daphne had become a close friend, perhaps the best friend she had ever had. She couldn't risk that friendship because of her husband's inappropriate attention. But deep down, in a place she tried not to notice, something responded to David's interest. She was a woman, and like any woman, she needed attention, desire, and to feel attractive. She had been alone for too long. It was a dangerous thought, and Brenda tried to push it away. But the seed had been sown, and in the darkness of her bedroom, she couldn't help thinking about how David had looked at her through the fence. October brought the first frosts to Norman and the bright colors of autumn. Brenda stood at the library window, watching students hurry across campus, wrapped in coats and scarves. 6 weeks had passed since she moved, and life had settled into a routine. She enjoyed her work. Her friendship with Daphne was growing stronger, but the uneasy tension surrounding David lingered. Over the past 2 weeks, he had started showing up at the library regularly. There was always an excuse, a book on auto mechanics, a tax return guide, or simply, "I was passing by and thought I'd stop in." Each time, he stayed longer than necessary, striking up conversations that gradually became more personal. "Daphne says you're from Tulsa," he said on one of his visits, settling down in the reading room with a book he clearly had no intention of reading. "Yes, I worked there in the college library." "What made you leave?" "Tulsa is a big city. There are more opportunities there." Brenda neatly arranged the returned books without looking up. "Sometimes you need a change." "I understand. I've lived in Norman my whole life. Sometimes I think it would be nice to go somewhere else, see the world." "What's stopping you?" David shrugged. "Commitments? Work. Daphne doesn't like change." There was a familiar note of discontent in his voice, one Brenda had noticed more and more often when he talked about his wife. "She likes stability. There's nothing wrong with that." "No, of course not. But sometimes stability turns into stagnation, you know? Every day is the same. Work, home, TV, sleep. Where's the passion in that?" He said the last word looking directly at her, and Brenda felt her cheeks flush. "David, I don't think we should. I'm just talking to my wife's friend, nothing inappropriate." But there was something in his eyes that made this conversation anything but innocent. The situation became more complicated when Daphne asked Brenda to watch the house while she drove to Oklahoma City to visit her sick mother for the weekend. "Just water the flowers and pick up the mail," she explained on Friday morning. "David will be home, but he's forgetful. He might not remember the plans." "Sure, no problem. The keys are under the flower pot on the porch, you know where." After work, Brenda stopped by her neighbor's house to water their houseplants. The Melfi's home was cozy, if modest. Soft furniture in the living room, family photos on the walls, the scent of vanilla from Daphne's scented candles. On the table lay unopened bills and a copy of Best Homes and Gardens magazine, open to a page featuring children's rooms. Brenda was watering the ficus in the living room when she heard the door open. "Daphne?" David's voice rang out. "Oh, it's you." He stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, with a can of beer in his hand. He looked tired, but his eyes lit up when he saw Brenda. "Watering the flowers. Daphne asked me to." "Good thing you reminded me. I would have forgotten." He took a sip of beer. "Want some? It's been a long day." "Thanks, but I need to get home." "It's early. Stay and keep me company. The house feels empty without Daphne." Something in his tone made Brenda pause. He looked genuinely lonely, lost in his own home. "Half an hour," she conceded. They sat down in the living room, and David brought her a Diet Cola. The conversation started innocently, about work, Daphne's plans to visit her mother, the upcoming city council elections. But gradually, the pauses between their remarks grew longer, their glances more intense. "Can I ask you a personal question?" David finally asked. Brenda tensed. "Depends." "When you were going through the changes, was it scary?" She hadn't expected that question. "Why are you interested?" "Just curious. I can't imagine what it's like to radically change your life, to stop being who you were." "I didn't stop being myself. I became who I always was." David nodded, thinking. "Do you regret anything?" "A lot, but not this decision." "Daphne said your family didn't understand." "They didn't understand or accept it. My parents stopped talking to me. My brother said he no longer had a sister." The pain of those memories was still raw. "I'm sorry." David leaned forward, his voice softening. "Their loss. Anyone who knows you can see what a wonderful woman you are." Something in the way he said "woman" made Brenda's heart beat faster. There was no outside curiosity or pity in his gaze, only genuine admiration. "David." "What?" "I'm just telling the truth. You're beautiful, intelligent, kind. Any man would be lucky." "Stop." "Why, because I'm married?" The directness of the question stunned her. "Yes, and because Daphne is my friend." "Daphne." He leaned back against the sofa, suddenly looking older than his years. "You know what she said to me before she left? That maybe we should think about getting a divorce." "What?" "We've been living like roommates for a long time. We sleep in separate rooms. We barely talk. After all the problems with the children, it's like a wall has grown between us." Brenda didn't know what to say. Daphne had never mentioned divorce, although the problems in her marriage were obvious. "Maybe she just needs time." "It's been 3 years, Brenda. 3 years of silence, distance, living in the same house but in different worlds." He looked at her desperately. "And then you came along, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something." "David, don't." "Don't what?" "Be honest? Say what I feel?" He stood up and walked over to the window, standing with his back to her. "You know what's strange? With you I feel alive. When we talk, when you smile, I forget all my problems." "That doesn't mean anything. I know it's crazy. I know you're Daphne's friend, but I can't stop thinking about you." He turned around, and there was such pain in his eyes, such need, that Brenda felt something break inside her. "I have to go," she whispered, standing up. "Don't go, please." "David." He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth of his body. "Just stay with me, that's all I need." But when their eyes met, they both knew it wasn't true. The air between them was electric, the tension almost palpable. "This is wrong," Brenda said, but she didn't move. "What's wrong? That I feel alive for the first time in years? That when I'm with you, I remember who I am?" His hand touched her cheek, and Brenda closed her eyes. She had been alone for so long. No one had looked at her as a desirable woman for so long. "We can't." "Why?" "Daphne. Daphne has already made her decision. She said we both deserve happiness, just not together." His lips touched her forehead, lightly, almost weightlessly. "I'm not asking for anything that could hurt you. Just give me the chance to feel like a man next to you." Brenda stepped back, her heart pounding. "I really have to go." This time, he didn't stop her. Brenda couldn't sleep all night, replaying the scene at Melfi's house in her head. David's touch still lingered on her skin, his words ringing in her ears. He said Daphne had mentioned divorce, but why hadn't her friend said anything about it? The next day, she went to water the flowers, hoping David wouldn't be home. But his pickup truck was in the driveway. He opened the door just as she raised her hand to knock. "I've been waiting for you," he said simply. "David, I've been thinking all night about what I said yesterday, about how I feel, and I realized I can't pretend anymore." He was wearing a clean shirt and jeans, his hair neatly combed. He had obviously been getting ready for her arrival. "The flowers in the living room are wilting," she said, trying to sound normal. "Forget about the flowers." His intensity was frightening and attractive at the same time. "What do you want from me?" "Honesty, from both of us." He took a step closer, and this time she didn't back away. "You feel the same way I do. I can see it in your eyes." "Even if I do." "No ifs. I know how you feel because I feel the same way." His hand fell on her waist, and Brenda didn't pull away. All the warnings in her head were drowned out by a stronger voice, the voice of a woman who had been alone for too long. "This will change everything," she whispered. "Everything has already changed. From the moment you moved here." When he kissed her, the world around her disappeared. There was only the warmth of his lips, the strength of his embrace, the forgotten feeling of being needed and wanted. They kissed long and passionately, with the desperation of people who had finally found what they were looking for. When they broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. "I didn't plan for this to happen," David said, holding her close. "Neither did I. But now that it has, I know." They spent the rest of the day together, talking, kissing, getting to know each other. David told her about his dreams of leaving Norman, about the feeling that life was passing him by. Brenda talked about her years of loneliness, about her fear of never finding someone who would accept her completely. "With you, I feel like myself," she said, lying on his shoulder on the sofa in the living room. "Not who I'm supposed to be, not who others want me to be, just myself." "Me too, for the first time in years." As the sun began to set, reality returned with a vengeance. "Daphne is coming tomorrow evening," Brenda said. "I know. What are we going to tell her?" David was silent for a long time. "I don't know, but I know I can't pretend nothing happened. And I can't lose her friendship." "Then what do we do?" Brenda stood up, adjusting her clothes. "I need time to think." "Brenda." He took her hand. "Whatever happens, I don't regret today." "Me neither. Me." But on her way home, she felt guilt eating away at her. Daphne trusted her, considered her her best friend. And she had betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. On Sunday morning, David sent her a message. "Can we meet? We need to talk." They met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town where no one was likely to know them. David looked as exhausted as she did. "I haven't slept all night," he said as soon as they sat down at a table in the corner. "Me neither." "Listen, I know how this looks. A married man, problems in his marriage. Another woman comes along." "David, but that's not it. This isn't a fling or a way to escape my problems with Daphne. What I feel for you is serious." Brenda wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking comfort in its warmth. "What do you feel?" "I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Brenda closed her eyes, trying to control her emotions. This is crazy. Maybe, but it's true. What about Daphne? I'll talk to her. I'll tell her how I feel. Not about us, not yet, but about how our marriage is over. What if she wants to try again? Go to a marriage counselor, take a vacation together? It won't work, Brenda. We both know that. Too much time has passed. Brenda looked at him, this ordinary man who had turned her world upside down. And then what? Even if you get divorced, I'll still be the woman who ruined her best friend's marriage. Our marriage was over long before you came along. You just showed me that I'm still capable of feeling. They agreed to wait. David would talk to Daphne about the divorce without mentioning Brenda. If the marriage was truly over, they could be together without feeling guilty for destroying it. But when Daphne returned from her trip that evening, all their plans fell apart. "Mom's feeling better," she said, hugging Brenda at the door. "Thanks for watching the house. David says you did a great job with the flowers." Brenda felt her face flush. "Don't mention it." "You know what? The trip helped me realize something." Daphne's eyes sparkled. "I've been too focused on our problems with David. Mom said that marriages go through rough patches, but if there's love, you can get through anything." Brenda's heart sank. "Daphne, I've decided to fight for our marriage. I made an appointment with a marriage counselor. The first session is on Wednesday. I think we can work things out." The lights came on in the house, and David's silhouette appeared in the window. Even from a distance, Brenda could feel his gaze. "That's wonderful," she managed to say. "You were right not to give up. David is a good man. We just forgot how to be happy together." That night, Brenda lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The phone on the nightstand was silent. No messages from David. What did he think of Daphne's decision? Would he agree to therapy? Or would he find a way to tell his wife the truth? The truth was that in just one day, everything had become even more complicated. Now she wasn't just a woman in love with a married man. Now she was a woman who had betrayed her friend's trust, a woman who was willing to fight for her marriage. And the worst part was that despite all the guilt and pain, she didn't regret what had happened. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The 2 weeks after Daphne's return were torture for everyone involved in this complicated situation. Brenda diligently avoided meeting David, limiting herself to polite greetings over the fence. Daphne, encouraged by her plans to save her marriage, constantly talked about the progress she was making in family therapy. "Dr. Harrison says we have a good chance," she shared with Brenda during their next tea party. "David was resistant at first, but now he seems more open. We're even planning a weekend trip to Lake Tacoma, just like in the old days." Brenda nodded and smiled, feeling the lie poison every word. David sent her short messages late at night. "I miss you. I can't forget that day. When can we talk?" She didn't reply, but she didn't delete them either. On Wednesday morning, Daphne arrived at the library with a group of second graders for their weekly field trip. The children scattered around the children's section, choosing books for their school project, while Daphne approached Brenda. "You look tired," she said with concern. "Is everything okay?" "I'm just not sleeping well. I can't find a new mattress." Daphne looked at her searchingly. "Maybe it's not the mattress. You look like someone who's been through something." Brenda's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Just a hunch. You've been kind of distant. You don't come in as often, you don't talk as much. Did I do something wrong?" "Of course not. I've just been busy. I'm preparing a big exhibition for Thanksgiving." Daphne didn't look convinced, but she didn't press the issue. "Okay, but if you ever want to talk, I'm always here for you. That's what friends are for." Brenda felt the guilt from these words physically, like a weight on her chest. On Thursday evening, the situation became even more tense. David showed up at Brenda's door around 8, while Daphne was at a parent-teacher conference at school. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "David, don't. I can't live like this anymore. Pretending that nothing happened, lying to Daphne and myself." Brenda reluctantly let him in. They went into the living room, but both remained standing, too much tension to sit down. "What do you want to say?" "I'm going to tell Daphne the truth about us." "What, David? No." "Why not? We're adults. We have a right to happiness." "What about her happiness?" She's trying to save your marriage. A marriage that died long before you came along. David moved closer. Brenda, I love you. I want to be with you openly, without hiding. On Friday morning, all three of their plans changed. Daphne was supposed to go with David to Lake Tacoma for a romantic weekend, part of their plan to rebuild their relationship. But in the morning, she woke up with a high fever and chills. "It's the flu," she said, wrapping herself in a blanket. "Go without me. A day in nature will do you good." David hesitated. "I don't want to leave you alone." "I'll be fine. Brenda is nearby if I need anything." After much persuasion, David finally left for the lake, promising to return by Sunday evening. Daphne slept through most of Saturday. When she woke up around noon, she felt a little better and decided to make chicken soup using her grandmother's recipe. But when she started gathering the ingredients, she realized she didn't have any turmeric, a key spice for the soup. Brenda definitely has some, she thought, and headed over to her neighbor's house. Brenda was just coming back from the store when she saw Daphne knocking on her door. "How are you? Feeling better?" "Much better. Listen, can I borrow some turmeric? I'm making a healing soup." "Sure, come on in." They went into the kitchen where Brenda began taking her groceries out of the bags. Daphne sat down at the table watching her friend. "Is David at the lake?" "Yes, I insisted he go. He needs to clear his head." At that moment, Brenda's phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from David. "I miss you. I'm coming home early. See you tonight." Daphne glanced at the screen and saw her husband's name. "David's texting you?" she asked in surprise. "Did something happen?" Panic struck Brenda. She quickly turned the phone face down. "Must have dialed the wrong number." "Wrong number?" Daphne frowned. "Let me see the message." "It's not important." "Brenda, let me see your phone." Daphne's voice took on a steely tone. She stood up from her chair and reached out her hand. "Seriously, show me." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Show me the damn phone!" The scream echoed through the kitchen. Daphne no longer looked sick. Her eyes burned with suspicion and growing rage. "Daphne, let me explain." "Explain what? That my husband is sending you messages? That you're lying to my face?" Daphne grabbed the phone before Brenda could react. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the screen and began reading the messages. With each message, her face grew paler. "I miss you. I can't forget that day. When will we see each other again?" Daphne's voice trembled. "What does this mean? Daphne, how long? How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" "We didn't sleep. I mean, not in the full sense." "Don't lie. I can see the dates. It started a month ago when I went to visit my mother, when I trusted you with my home." Daphne threw the phone against the wall with such force that the screen shattered into pieces. "How could you? How could you?" Brenda pressed her back against the wall, her heart beating wildly. "It's not what you think. Not what I think. You're sleeping with my husband, your best friend's husband." Daphne, calm down. "Calm down! You ruined my life and I'm supposed to calm down?" Tears of rage streamed down Daphne's cheeks. "I trusted you. I told you about our problems and you used that against me." "I didn't use anyone. You're lying. You found out we had problems and decided to steal my husband. You're a classic slut." The word hit Brenda like a slap in the face. "Don't you dare say that! Why not? That's exactly what you are. A slut who steals other people's husbands. I didn't steal him." "Of course you did. And you know what's the worst part? You used your special feature." Daphne almost spat the words out. "I bet he doesn't even know what you really are. What's between your legs?" The world around Brenda turned red. "Shut up. Did I hit the nail on the head? Yes, I know your little secret. Did you think I was blind? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Shut up! A man in a dress seducing someone else's husband. I wonder what turned him on more. The fact that you're my friend, or the fact that you're a pervert." At that moment, the front door slammed. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both women fall silent. "Daphne? Brenda?" David's voice rang out. "I'm back early. The road was clear." The footsteps approached the kitchen. Daphne turned toward the entrance, her face contorted with rage. "Here he is, my loving husband." David stopped in the doorway, his travel bag falling from his hands. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Daphne was standing in the middle of the kitchen, red with anger. Brenda was pressed against the wall, and pieces of a broken phone were scattered on the floor. "What's going on?" "Your whore just confessed!" Daphne screamed. "I know everything, David. I know about your meetings, about your messages, about how you fucked my best friend." David's face turned pale. "Daphne, I can explain." "Explain? What is there to explain?" Daphne rushed toward her husband, waving her arms. 7 years of marriage. 7 years I've been faithful to you. And you've been cheating on me with this woman. Daphne, stop. No, now I'll talk. She turned to Brenda. And you're the most despicable creature I know. I took you in. I befriended you. I protected you from gossip. What gossip? David asked. About your mistress being transgender. Yes, dear, your Brenda used to be a man. David looked at Brenda in surprise. Is that true? Brenda nodded, unable to speak. And you didn't care? Daphne squealed. It doesn't change how I feel about her, David said quietly. Daphne let out a sound like a wounded animal. So you chose her over me. You chose a man in a skirt over a real woman. Daphne, stop it, Brenda intervened. Stop it? Stop it? You know what I regret? That I took you in. That I believed someone like you could be a real friend? She took a step toward Brenda. You're disgusting. A vile, lying pervert. Stop, Brenda shouted. But Daphne didn't stop. I wonder if your family knows what you do. Do they know that their son is a whore? Shut up! Shut up right now! What will happen if the whole town finds out? All the parents of my students? Do you think they'll want their children? Things escalated quickly. David stepped forward, trying to stop his wife. Daphne pushed him away and lunged at Brenda again with her fists. You ruined my life! In the ensuing brawl, no one noticed someone grab a knife from the cutting board. Everything was a mess. Screams, shoving, fighting. Then there was a sharp sound as if something had burst. A scream. Silence. Brenda lay on the kitchen floor, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. A knife was sticking out of her chest, blood slowly spreading across the white tiles. Daphne and David stood over the body, both breathing heavily, both in shock from what had happened. What have we done? Daphne whispered. David knelt down next to Brenda, checking her pulse, but it was obvious that there was nothing he could do. She's dead. The reality of what had happened began to sink in. A dead woman on the kitchen floor, blood everywhere, a knife with someone's fingerprints on it. What should we do? Daphne was shaking all over. We need to call the police. What are we going to tell them? David looked at his wife, then at Brenda's body. The truth, that it was an accident. What if they don't believe us? They will, because it's the truth. He took out his phone and dialed 911. I need the police and an ambulance. 1247 Lindale Avenue. There's been an accident. A woman is dead. Within minutes, the house was filled with the sound of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed outside the windows, casting sinister shadows on the kitchen walls. Detective Robert Kane was one of the first to arrive. A middle-aged man with tired eyes and 20 years of police experience, he quickly assessed the situation. A woman lay on the kitchen floor with a knife in her chest. Standing nearby were two people, a man and a woman, both in shock, their clothes splattered with blood. I'm Detective Kane, he introduced himself. Who called the police? I did, said David. David Melfi. This is my wife, Daphne. And this is? Kane pointed to the body. Brenda Morgan, our neighbor. What happened? Daphne and David exchanged glances. It was an accident, Daphne said. We had an argument and she fell on the knife. An argument about what? That's personal. Kane looked at the couple searchingly. There was something about their behavior that alarmed him, but he couldn't put his finger on it. I need to talk to each of you separately. You first, Mr. Melfi. He led David into the living room, leaving Daphne under the watchful eye of an officer. Tell me what happened. From the beginning. David took a deep breath. I came home earlier than planned. I was supposed to be at the lake until tomorrow, but I decided to come back. I walked into the house and heard screams coming from the kitchen. What kind of screams? Women's voices. Daphne and Brenda were arguing. About what? David paused. Brenda and I were having an affair. Daphne found out. What kind of affair? A romantic affair. We'd been seeing each other secretly for the last month. Kane wrote down every word. And what happened when you entered the kitchen? They were fighting, physically. They were pushing and shouting. I tried to separate them, but Daphne was furious and Brenda was defending herself. Where did the knife come from? It was on the cutting board. In the commotion, someone grabbed it. Who exactly? I don't know. It all happened very quickly. And then, they were fighting over the knife. Brenda slipped and fell. The knife went into her chest. Is that all? Yes. After that, we called the police right away. Kane then questioned Daphne. Her version matched her husband's in the main details, but the detective noticed some discrepancies in the minor details. Mrs. Melfi, how did you find out about your husband's affair? I saw a message on Brenda's phone. It was from David. And how did you feel? Anger, betrayal. She was my best friend. Enough to kill her? I didn't kill her. It was an accident. Tell me about the struggle. I was so angry I lunged at her. We were pushing and scratching. Then David came in and tried to pull us apart. Brenda grabbed the knife. Are you sure she grabbed it? Daphne fell silent. It all happened so fast. Someone grabbed the knife, we fought, and it accidentally hit her in the heart? Yes, that's exactly what happened. After the interrogations, Kane returned to the scene of the crime. Forensic technicians had already taken preliminary photographs and begun collecting evidence. What do the fingerprints on the knife show? He asked. All three of them, replied the technician. The victim and both spouses. And the angle of entry? Strange. If the victim fell onto the knife, as the witnesses claim, the blow should have been at a different angle. What do you mean? It looks like the knife went in from top to bottom, as if it was stabbed deliberately. Kane frowned. So it wasn't an accident? Possibly. We need a full examination. The detective glanced toward the living room where the Melfis were sitting. One of them was lying, or both. Take their statements on the record, he told the officer, and don't let anyone leave without my permission. The investigation into Brenda Morgan's murder was just getting started. Monday brought the first results of the forensic examination. Detective Kane sat in his office, studying the report from pathologist Dr. Sarah Chen. The conclusions were clear and disturbing. The stab wound was inflicted from above at an angle of 45 degrees, the report said. The depth of penetration and the nature of the injuries indicate significant force. The data is inconsistent with the theory of an accidental fall onto a knife. Kane leaned back in his chair, thinking. One of the Melfis was lying. Perhaps both. There was a knock at the door. Officer Johnson entered with a folder of documents. Detective, we have new information. The victim's neighbor, Maggie Wilson, wants to give a statement. Bring her in. Maggie Wilson was a woman in her 40s, nervous and agitated. She worked at the post office and knew everyone in the neighborhood. I didn't know if I should say anything, she began, fidgeting with her purse. But after what happened to poor Brenda, what do you want to tell us, Mrs. Wilson? I saw David Melfi coming to Brenda's house, more than once, always when Daphne wasn't home. When was that? Over the last few weeks. I work shifts, so I'm sometimes home during the day. I saw him going in through the back door. And on Saturday? Did you see anything unusual? Maggie nodded. David came back from the lake around 3 o'clock. I was watering the flowers in the garden. He parked at his house, but instead of going home, he went to Brenda's. Are you sure about the time? Absolutely. My favorite show was just ending. Kane wrote down her statement. It contradicted David's version of events, which was that he had returned and immediately heard screams coming from the kitchen. What happened next? About 10 minutes later, I heard screams, women's voices, then a man's. It sounded like a fight. How long did it last? 15 minutes, maybe 20. Then everything went quiet. Half an hour later, the police arrived. After Maggie left, Kane called David Melfi back in for further questioning. Mr. Melfi, you said you came home and immediately heard screams. But we have a witness who saw you go to Mrs. Morgan's house first. David turned pale. That's not exactly true. Then what happened? I did go to Brenda's first. I wanted to talk to her. About what? About us, about our relationship. I decided it was time to end it. And what happened? David sighed heavily. When I got there, Daphne was already there. They were arguing. Daphne found out about our affair. How? She saw a message on Brenda's phone. I wrote to her that I wanted to meet. Go on. Daphne was furious. She was yelling at Brenda, calling her names. She said some terrible things. Like what? That Brenda is transgender. Daphne used that against her, saying hurtful things. What did you do? I tried to calm them down, but they wouldn't listen. Daphne was like a mad woman. Who grabbed the knife? David was silent for a long time. Daphne. She grabbed the knife from the cutting board. Why? I don't know. Maybe to scare Brenda, or worse. What happened next? Brenda tried to take the knife away. They struggled. I tried to pull them apart, but Daphne hit her, on purpose, right in the chest. Kane looked up from his notes. You're saying your wife deliberately killed Brenda Morgan? Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. Why didn't you say so right away? She's my wife. I couldn't. I thought maybe I could make it look like an accident. Mr. Melfi, you understand that you are testifying against your own wife? David nodded without looking up. I understand, but Brenda didn't deserve to die. The truth is the truth. After that, Kane called Daphne in. The woman looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Mrs. Melfi, your husband has changed his testimony. He claims that you deliberately stabbed Mrs. Morgan. Daphne raised her head sharply. What? That's a lie. Then explain what really happened. I already told you. It was an accident. A witness saw your husband arrive at the victim's house half an hour before the murder. What witness? It doesn't matter. What matters is that your original story is false. Daphne clenched her fists. Fine. Yes, David came earlier, but that doesn't change anything. Tell me the truth. The whole truth. Daphne took a deep breath. I found out about their affair from messages. I was furious and went to Brenda to confront her. And we argued. I was angry and said things I regret. Then David came. Go on. He took her side. He said he loved her and wanted a divorce. Daphne's voice broke. 7 years of marriage, and he chose her. Who took the knife? I grabbed it. I wanted to scare them, to show them I wouldn't let them ruin my life. And what happened? Brenda tried to take it away from me. We fought. And then what? David helped her. My own husband helped his mistress take the knife away from me. Daphne was crying. They ganged up on me. Mrs. Melfi, who delivered the fatal blow. A long pause. David. When they took the knife, David hit Brenda. Why? I don't know. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe he wanted to get rid of the problem. But he did it. Kane put down his pen. Now he had two conflicting versions. The husband accused the wife accused the husband. Mrs. Melfi, do you understand the seriousness of the situation? I do, but I'm telling the truth. The next day, Kane returned to the crime scene. Something bothered him about both sides' statements. He carefully examined the kitchen, studied the blood stains, and the position of the furniture. His attention was drawn to blood spatters on the wall next to the cutting board. The angle and height did not match either version. Call in a crime scene reconstruction expert, he said to Officer Johnson. The expert arrived an hour later. Mark Tweedy was one of the state's best crime scene reconstruction specialists. What can you tell me? Kane asked after the expert had examined the scene. Interesting picture, Tweedy said, pointing to the bloodstains. See these splatters? They indicate that the blow was delivered from here. He stood next to the refrigerator, holding an imaginary knife. The victim was standing here, with his back to the killer. The blow was delivered from above with the right hand. Does that rule out a struggle? Not entirely, but it makes it unlikely. The victim was probably taken by surprise. What about the fingerprints on the knife? There are prints from all three of them, but the clearest ones belong to... Tweedy checked his notes. David Melfi. His prints are on top of all the others. Kane nodded. The picture was beginning to clear up. That evening, he summoned the Melfis for a final interview. This time, they were questioned together. I have the expert's report. Kane began. Would you like to hear what he found? Daphne and David exchanged glances. Brenda Morgan was killed with a single stab to the heart. The blow was delivered from above by someone standing behind her. The knife has prints from all three of them, but the clearest ones are Mr. Melfi's. That doesn't mean anything, David began. Mr. Melfi, I think it's time to tell the truth, the whole truth. David lowered his head. I didn't mean to kill her. David! Daphne exclaimed. Stop lying! Stop! He looked at his wife. You were right all along. I did it. Tell us how it really happened, Kane said. When I got to Brenda's, they were already fighting. Daphne had found out about our affair and was furious. She was saying terrible things about Brenda, about her being transgender. Go on. I tried to defend Brenda. I told Daphne that I loved Brenda and wanted a divorce. Daphne grabbed a knife. And what happened? Brenda and I took the knife away from her. Daphne fell. And then what? Brenda said she would tell everyone about our relationship, that she would make Daphne a laughingstock, that she would ruin her career. David was breathing heavily. I realized my life was over. Divorce, scandal, losing my job. Everyone would find out I'd been cheating on my wife with a transgender woman. And you decided to kill Mrs. Morgan? I didn't decide. It just happened. The knife was in my hands. Brenda had her back to me and I just stabbed her. And then you decided to pin it on your wife? Daphne agreed to say it was an accident. We thought we could get away with it. Kane looked at Daphne. You covered for your murderous husband? He's my husband, she said quietly. No matter what. Mrs. Melfi, do you understand that you are an accessory to murder? Daphne nodded, not looking up. A week later, David Melfi was arrested on charges of first-degree murder. Daphne was charged with accessory to the crime and concealment of a crime. The news of the murder shocked Norman. Local newspapers were full of headlines about a love triangle that ended in tragedy. The conservative part of town condemned the immoral behavior of all involved, while more liberal residents expressed sympathy for Brenda as a victim of discrimination. A memorial plaque was erected at the library where Brenda worked. Helen Rogers, the deputy director, organized a fundraiser for LGBT organizations in memory of her deceased colleague. Brenda was a wonderful person, she told reporters. She deserved love and acceptance, not hatred and violence. David Melfi's trial took place 6 months later. The jury found him guilty of second-degree murder, which is premeditated murder without prior planning. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Daphne Melfi pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting and received a 5-year suspended sentence with mandatory psychological treatment. In his final statement in court, David said, I can't bring Brenda back. I can't fix my mistake. But I can admit the truth. I killed a wonderful woman because of my cowardice and prejudice. She deserved a better life and a better death. The house on Lindale Avenue stood empty for a long time. Neighbors said they heard voices in the evenings, but it was just small-town gossip trying to make sense of the tragedy. Detective Kane closed the case, but he thought about it for a long time. There had been many murders in his career, for money, for drugs, for jealousy, but this case was special. It was a tangled web of love and hate, acceptance and prejudice, desire and fear. 6 months later, Brenda's house was bought by a young couple with 2 children. Life in the neighborhood gradually returned to normal, but the memory of the tragedy remained.